Right. My presentation is on the Wars of the Roses. So this is all going to start because Henry V is going to die. In 1422, Henry V bites the dust, and that leaves Henry VI as the King of England. Henry VI is very young, so he doesn't really have any control of what's going on. He can't figure out what to do with the country. So a King's Council is established. This King's Council is going to be a breeding ground for tensions and conflict because they control England. So a lot of different factions are going to fight for control. The big names you need to know are the Yorks and the Lancasters. Now, that's going to get into why this is called the Wars of the Roses. Both of them have the sigil of a rose, the white rose for the Yorks and the red rose for the Lancasters. So they're going to try and get control over England during this time because Henry VI, even when he grows up past being young, is an extremely ineffectual leader. He doesn't have any real power or control. He's just a really bad king. He's even going to lose a lot of control in France because at the time England controls some amount of France. This is just not good stuff for England. Now another important person is Margaret of Anjou. She comes from France and marries Henry VI. Now she is a lot more politically motivated than Henry is, and she wants to retain power very badly, and she wants her son to be king. She's scheming and plotting and always thinking about what she can do, and she's going to be a huge leader for the Lancasters for a long period of time because she's going to be very motivated and determined to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep fighting for power for her and her son. And this plotting nature became the inspiration for Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. Next, there's Richard, the Duke of York. He plays a huge role in this and getting this conflict started. So he is extremely influential. He is descended from the third son of King Edward III, and so he has a really strong claim to the throne. And he's going to fight with the Lancasters, and especially the Duke of Somerset, who's an extremely influential person on the King's Council at the time, and just really argue with them all the time about how England should be going and such. And he's the governor of France, and he's extremely well respected and influential, and he's got a really big place in this government. Then, Henry VI is going to have a breakdown and go crazy. He goes nuts. So, Margaret of Anjou tries to take control and power, but she's really unpopular. No one really likes her. Her power just really isn't very strong and good at the time. So Parliament is going to vote and have Richard become Lord Protector of England in the meantime. Now Richard was the inspiration for Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, another Game of Thrones inspiration. This entire set of wars was an inspiration for the show and the drama and the series. However, soon Henry's going to come back, and he's going to be back in health, and Margaret's going to be whispering in his ear, and she's going to say, "Get rid of Richard, bring back the Duke of Somerset." Richard, when he was Lord Protector, imprisoned Somerset, and so now Margaret wants all her allies back in control. Henry's going to listen. This is going to really, really tick off Richard. And so he is going to take arms, and this is where we come to the first conflicts of the Civil War in England. So, Richard's going to get arms. In 1455, he's marching south to get rid of the powers that be. And they're going to come to battle at St. Albans, and this is the first battle of St. Albans. And Richard is going to come out victorious. The king was not prepared for this battle. It took him by surprise. He didn't expect it. Maybe he should have, because he just got rid of Richard, and Richard was very angry. But Richard comes in, and he's going to win this battle. He outnumbers the king. He's got archers when the king doesn't, and they're going to win this. And Richard is going to become Lord Protector of the realm again. Take Henry prisoner. Margaret's going to flee. So that is going to get us to Richard being Lord Protector again. So Margaret, not going to give up. She's scheming. She wants her son to be in charge. She really, really likes his power. So she's going to come back, and they're going to meet at Blore Heath. Now, the Yorks are outnumbered 2-1 here, but they're still going to find a way to win, and there's going to be a big boost for Richard's power here. Then, Margaret's going to come again, build up another army, and keep coming back, because she's determined, she perseveres. You got to give her credit for that. She comes back, and she actually wins this time, and Henry is put back on the throne. Richard has to flee to Ireland. Then Richard, he's also not going to give up. He feels slighted, he's upset, he's just really angry. So he's going to build up his army, and he's going to come roaring back. And the Lancasters are, we got this. But, little do they know, there's a turncoat in the Lancaster camp. And this turncoat's going to let Richard into camp in secret. And so he can take the Lancasters by surprise. He'll knock them all out and take Henry prisoner again, send Margaret back into exile, and he will be Lord Protector again. So, now Richard's got to decide what to do. He's like, I have the power again, I'm Lord Protector again. And here's where it comes down to. Richard gets Henry to agree that Richard is the heir to the throne. And that all of Richard's ancestors are going to be, or not, descendants, not ancestors, are going to be the heirs to the throne. They're going to take over for Henry's dynasty. And Henry agrees to this as long as he can keep ruling. But Margaret doesn't like this, and she's going to come roaring back. She's going to come fighting back, and Richard's going to come to try and meet her at battle. This is going to be at the Battle of Wakefield Green. And here, Margaret's armies are going to actually win. Richard's head is going to get cut off, and his head is going to be put on display. Humiliating. And his son, Edward IV, is going to have to take up where Richard left off. So, Edward IV is going to keep going, fighting back. He wants to, avenge his dad, get back on power. He's very determined to that. He's going to go and he's actually going to lose the second Battle of St. Albans. We talked about the first one where the Yorks won. And he's going to lose this time to the Lancasters, but he's going to keep coming back, and it'll come to the Battle of Towton. And at the Battle of Towton, Edward's going to win, and he's going to get the throne. However, it was the bloodiest bloodiest one-day battle in all of English history. Very bloody, big battle, tens of thousands of lives lost. Huge. But Edward is going to get the power. But Margaret's not done. She's not done. She wasn't done with Richard. She's not done with Edward. She's coming back. She's going to get an army together, and she's going to get the Earl of Warwick on her side. Now, Warwick helped Richard back in the day, and he was on the York side. However, Edward backed out of a marriage, and this really upset the Earl of Warwick, so he's going to defect to the Lancaster side. And this is where you can see Edward being the inspiration for Robb Stark in Game of Thrones. And so, Edward is going to fight and now have to go up against Warwick and the Lancasters and other York defectors. And the Lancasters are going to win. Edward is taken out of power, and Henry is restored to the throne. But then Edward comes back, and he gets the throne back, and this is going to be for good for Margaret. Margaret's done now. She's out. She's forced to flee to France. Henry's going to be taken prisoner, and he will eventually die in 1471. And Margaret will die in poverty. Edward will then reign until his death in 1483. His son, Edward V, will have to take over from there, but Edward V's very young, and that will lead to more problems in England. So, this is going to come back to it. So Edward V is very young, and he's got another younger brother. And so Edward IV's brother, Richard, is upset. He wants the power, not his nephews. So he will have his nephews declared illegitimate, and he will move on to take the throne from there. Plots and plots and plots to get it. But he's not going to stop there. He's going to lock his nephews up in a tower. And in this tower, he has them stored for what he says is safekeeping. Now, it's not really for safekeeping, it's to keep his claim to the throne safe. He wants to keep the people with the stronger claim out and away. But it's not going to end there, because one of the biggest mysteries in English history is going to occur. The twins in the tower are going to disappear. Instead of being locked up in the London Tower, they're gone. And most people think Richard killed them. Now, whether he did or didn't, or who did what, it's still a mystery. No one really knows for certain. But a lot of people think Richard killed him. So, he's not very well liked anymore. And that's going to put a really large dent in his power. So, in comes Henry Tudor. He's a Lancastrian. He lives in France. And it's now 1485. So he is going to take this opportunity. Richard's power is weak. York's power is weak. Everyone hates Richard. He killed 2 little kids. At least that's what everyone thinks. So, Henry Tudor, with the backing of nobles in France, comes across the sea into Britain. And they're going to meet at the Battle of Bosworth. And at this Battle of Bosworth, Henry Tudor is going to win. This is going to establish the Tudor dynasty. And here's the symbol for the Tudor dynasty. It's a rose, but red and white. And the reason there's white in there is to end the violence and the fighting and the feuding. Henry Tudor will marry Elizabeth of York, actually sister to the twins who were locked away. And this is going to end all the fighting and the Wars of the Roses and start the Tudor dynasty. I have a video. Here.
Something pretty, boom, I'm the chef. Wait.
As far as we know, medieval England was never invaded by ice zombies or terrorized by dragons, but it was shaken by a power struggle between 2 noble families, spanning generations and involving a massive cast of characters with complex motives and shifting loyalties. If that sounds familiar, it's because the historical conflicts known as the Wars of the Roses served as the basis for much of the drama in Game of Thrones. The real-life seeds of war were sown by the death of King Edward III in 1377. Edward's oldest son had died before his father, but his 10-year-old son, Richard II, succeeded to the throne ahead of Edward's 3 surviving sons. This skipping of an entire generation left lingering claims to the throne among their various offspring, particularly the Lancasters, descended from Edward's 3rd son, and the Yorks descended from his 4th son. The name of the ensuing wars comes from the symbols associated with the 2 families, the White Rose of York and the Red Rose of Lancaster. The Lancasters first gained the throne when Richard II was deposed by his cousin Henry IV in 1399. Despite sporadic unrest, their reign remained secure until 1422, when Henry V's death in a military campaign left an infant Henry VI as king. Weak-willed and dominated by a advisors, Henry was eventually convinced to marry Margaret of Anjou to gain French support.
There's the War of the Roses.